At the start of the First World War, the German East Asia Squadron under Vice-Admiral Maximilian von Spee was on the China station. It consisted of 2 armoured cruisers and 3 light cruisers. One of the light cruisers was the Emden, under the command of Captain Karl von Müller. With war declared, the East Asia Squadron sallied forth against Allied targets across the Pacific. The Emden was detached from the squadron on the 14th of August 1914 and sailed for the Indian Ocean, there to spread chaos and confound the enemy as much as possible. For 2 months, the Emden did just that. By November, Captain von Müller had decided to attack Allied communications. The Emden, in company with a captured collier, the Buresk, approached Direction Island in the Cocos Islands. It was on this island, the largest in the Cocos Group, that the Eastern Extension Australasia and China Telegraph Company had established a 29-man cable station. It was known the station was a relay for 2 submarine cables, the Australia-India cable and the Australia-Zanzibar-Africa cable. Strategically, it was an obvious target for a German raider keen on damaging British interests in the Indian Ocean. The Germans' plan was to land a party under First Officer Helmut von Müller on the island who would destroy the wireless equipment and sever the cables. On Sunday the 8th of November, the landing party was drawn up under von Müller's command. They would use the Emden's steam pinnace and 2 cutters. The Buresk was detached and ordered to move off some 30 nautical miles to await the signal to close up once the Emden had captured the cable station. Early Monday morning, the Emden steamed in sight of Direction Island. The German cruiser usually had 3 funnels, but in its raiding around the Indian Ocean, it had adopted the guise of a British armoured cruiser by erecting an extra dummy funnel. On the morning of the 9th, it did so again. It dropped anchor in the harbour and launched its boats. The steam pinnace, armed with Maxim guns, towing the 2 cutters, and all 3 flying the flag of Imperial Germany. The weather was favourable, so Captain von Müller took the opportunity to order the Buresk to close in for coaling. The message was overheard by a wireless operator at the cable station who had been chatting to Singapore. At around the same time, the station's medical officer, watching the cruiser's approach, saw through the Emden's disguise. The element of surprise was no longer a surprise. The island woke up to the Emden's presence. The duty officer spotted the approaching boats in the water and cabled Singapore that the Emden was landing an armed party. The news was relayed around the world and reached the Telegraph Company's headquarters in Electra House in London in minutes. The Germans landed and divided into 3 sections, each under an officer. They hurried into the station, pushed out the operators who were herded into the mess, and posted armed guards. Then they went to work smashing the telegraph equipment. The wireless mast was toppled with dynamite, though, at the operator's request, the mast was felled away from the station's tennis courts. This rather sporting attitude was extended to private property, which the Germans did not steal or damage, and even the $40 in the telegraph office safe was returned rather than looted, which was very nice of them. The same could not be said for the telegraph equipment. The landing party smashed the dynamos and the switchboards with enthusiasm. The telegraph cables, however, proved to be more difficult. At first, von Müller's men tried to cut them using a handsaw, but gave up in favour of axes. They cut the Australia cable and turned their attention to another cable. Unbeknownst to them, this cable was a spare that the station's superintendent had prepared as a decoy. There had been no word from the Buresk, but by 9:15 contact had been re-established. The Emden's lookouts watched as a cloud of coal smoke approached the island. It took them 15 minutes to realize that the approaching ship wasn't the Buresk, but the Australian cruiser Sydney. For God's sake. The crew of the Emden were confident. The siren was sounded 3 times to recall the landing party, but it quickly became clear there wasn't enough time to pick them up. Leaving von Müller and his men behind in their boats, the Emden put to sea. What followed was a running sea fight between the two warships as they steamed north towards North Keeling Island. Von Müller and his party found themselves trapped on Direction Island. They made the Telegraph staff prisoners of war for a second time, but 4 of the staff gave the Germans the slip and were able to watch the Emden and the Sydney battle it out. The Germans also watched, and they saw the defeat. Realizing they would have to escape on their own, they commandeered a 3-masted schooner by the name of Aisha. They loaded it with half the cable station's 4-month store of supplies and then freed the telegraph operators. They then made all sail. For the operators on Direction Island, it was back to work. The cable station was up and running again before the Germans reached Bombay. As a trophy, one of the axes used by the Germans was mounted and hung on a wall at the offices of the Telegraph Company. It is now a part of the Telegraph Museum Porthcurno's collection.